The first time I heard that every man she dated had been compared to me, I laughed. Not because it sounded flattering. Because it sounded impossible. I hadn't seen Emily in almost 9 years. 9 years of birthdays missed, holidays spent apart. And countless moments where I wondered if walking away had been the biggest mistake of my life. Or the only right thing I had ever done. Then, on a rainy Saturday afternoon, her younger sister accidentally changed everything. You know, Sophie said as she stirred her coffee without looking up. None of them were ever good enough because they weren't you. The spoon slipped from my hand and clattered against the table. I'm sorry, what? Sophie's eyes widened. She covered her mouth. Oh no. She looked exactly like someone who had opened a door that was never supposed to be unlocked. I wasn't supposed to say that. I stared at her. What do you mean? She shook her head quickly. Forget I said anything. No. I leaned forward. For 9 years I've believed Emily hated me. She disappeared without a real explanation. She ignored every letter I sent. She returned the ring. And now you're telling me every guy she dated was compared to me. Sophie closed her eyes. I messed up. Compared how? She looked toward the window as if hoping rain could rescue her. You really don't know. I don't know anything. Silence stretched between us. Then she whispered something that made my heart stop. She never wanted someone richer than you. I frowned. She wanted someone kinder. Emily and I met when we were both 24. I was a paramedic working impossible shifts. She taught second grade. Neither of us had much money. Our first date was pizza eaten on the hood of my old pickup truck because the restaurant had lost our reservation. She laughed the entire evening. She said expensive dates made people pretend. She preferred seeing who someone really was. For 3 years we built a simple life together. We dreamed about a small house with a front porch. A dog. Maybe children someday. Nothing extravagant. Just peace. Then everything changed. My younger brother Daniel was diagnosed with kidney failure. Insurance covered almost nothing. My parents had already mortgaged their home. There wasn't enough money left. Every paycheck disappeared into hospital bills. Emily never complained. Instead, she quietly started working evenings tutoring children. When I found out, I was furious. You shouldn't have to do this. She smiled. We're a team. No. My family isn't your responsibility. She took my hands. The people you love become the people I love. I thought I had found the strongest woman in the world. Maybe I had. Months later, Daniel got worse. The transplant waiting list wasn't moving. Doctors weren't optimistic. I stopped sleeping. Stopped eating. Worked every overtime shift available. One night Emily found me sitting alone outside the hospital. She wrapped a blanket around my shoulders. You can't save everyone. I have to save him. She didn't answer. She simply rested her head against mine. Looking back, I realized that was the moment she made her decision. I just didn't know it yet. 3 weeks later she ended our engagement. No warning. No argument. No explanation that made sense. I can't do this anymore. Those were her exact words. I think we want different futures. I felt like the ground disappeared beneath me. I begged. Asked what I'd done wrong. She cried harder than I had ever seen. But she kept saying the same thing. I'm sorry. Then she walked away. I spent years believing love simply wasn't enough. Sophie finally looked at me. She lied. I blinked. What? She lied because she thought it was the only way you'd let her go. My chest tightened. What are you talking about? Sophie wiped tears from her eyes. The week before she left, she secretly got tested. I frowned. For what? She whispered. To see if she could donate her kidney. Everything inside me froze. No. She was a match. I couldn't breathe. No. She didn't tell anyone except Mom and me. I stared at her. Daniel's donor. She nodded. It was Emily. My world tilted. I remembered that anonymous donor. The miracle everyone celebrated. The person who refused to reveal their identity. The donor who disappeared immediately after surgery. The donor. Emily. I stood so quickly the chair nearly fell. Why wouldn't she tell me? Sophie was crying openly now. Because she knew you. What does that mean? She knew you'd never allow it. She was right. I wouldn't have. Never. Not in a million years. You would have sacrificed your brother to protect her, Sophie said softly. And she knew she'd never forgive herself if she watched that happen. I couldn't speak. Every memory suddenly looked different. Every goodbye. Every tear. Every unanswered letter. Everything. But that's not all, Sophie whispered. I looked up. There was another reason. What? The surgery damaged her health more than doctors expected. My stomach dropped. She spent almost a year recovering. What? They weren't sure she'd ever have children. I felt physically sick. She didn't want you staying because you felt guilty. So she made me hate her. Sophie nodded. She believed you'd eventually find someone else. Instead. Neither of us ever really did. Over the next hour Sophie told me everything. Every relationship Emily had tried. Every man who looked perfect on paper. Successful. Handsome. Wealthy. Funny. None lasted. Do you know why? Not because they weren't good men. But because they measured kindness differently. One boyfriend laughed at a homeless veteran asking for change. Emily ended things the next day. Another complained when she spent weekends volunteering. Another refused to visit elderly neighbors because he was too busy. Another mocked a child for crying. Each time she quietly walked away. When friends asked why, she'd always give polite excuses. The truth stayed buried. They simply weren't me. Not because I was extraordinary. Because years earlier she'd watched me stop traffic to rescue an injured dog. She'd watched me buy groceries for strangers without expecting thanks. She'd watched me spend Christmas at the hospital because patients shouldn't feel alone. Those weren't grand gestures. They were habits. She'd fallen in love with those habits. And apparently, she never stopped. That evening I drove to the address Sophie wrote on a napkin. A small white house. Flowers lining the porch. Wind chimes dancing softly. I almost turned around. Then the front door opened. Emily stepped outside. Time hadn't taken away her smile. It had simply made it quieter. She froze. So. I managed. It was you. Her eyes immediately filled with tears. Sophie told you. I nodded. For a long moment neither of us moved. Finally I asked the only question that mattered. Why didn't you trust me enough to decide with you? She looked down. Because love makes people choose each other. She swallowed. And I needed you to choose your brother. I walked closer. You should have let me love you through it. She started crying. I didn't know how. Neither did I. So instead of speaking, I hugged her. 9 years disappeared in that single embrace. I'm sorry, she whispered against my shoulder. I thought losing me would hurt less than watching me suffer. I laughed through tears. You were spectacularly wrong. She smiled sadly. I know. Months passed before either of us talked about forever again. There was no dramatic proposal. No expensive vacation. No fireworks. Just one quiet evening sitting on the same old pickup truck. Where we'd shared pizza years earlier. I handed her a small ring. This one's not for promises. She looked at me curiously. What is it for? 4 second chances. She smiled the same smile that had captured my heart years before. I'd like that. Years later, when people asked why our marriage seemed so peaceful, they expected us to share relationship secrets. Communication. patience, compromise. Those mattered. But they weren't the real answer. The real answer was simpler. When you've loved someone enough to save a life without asking for credit. When you've discovered that true kindness asks for nothing in return. When forgiveness becomes stronger than pride. You stop measuring love by words. You measure it by quiet sacrifices no one else ever sees. And every anniversary, my brother joins us for dinner. Before anyone touches the food, he raises his glass toward Emily. She always blushes and tells him to stop. But he never does. Because every year he says the exact same sentence. Some heroes wear uniforms. Then he smiles at the woman who gave him the rest of his life. And some heroes simply choose kindness when nobody is watching.